We're live.
Hello, we are at the December 8th Academic Standards meeting. We have a short meeting tonight, one agenda item where we will discuss the school calendar. The administration is going to show us a couple of alternatives, and the hope is that by the end of the night, we will coalesce around a single version so that we can present it at our board meeting next week with the hope to approve in January.
I think I speak for everybody in saying well done in getting it out this far in advance. I know a lot of us have been asking for that, so that's great.
You want to do a
So,
round?
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
for the
go ahead.
benefit of anyone listening at home, I'm Denise Brooks, and we'll go around the table and introduce ourselves.
Robert Frazier, Superintendent.
Barry Desko, Director of K-12 Education.
Andy Block, School Director.
Jerry Grubb, School Director.
Kyla McKessie, School Director.
Ed Tate, School Director. Phil Foster, School Board.
Wendy Thomas.
Matt Federson, IT Director. Mike Thorward.
Okay. So I'm going to pass out some hard copies, and we'll use the PowerPoint for folks that may be viewing this. It'll just be easier for your eyes to look at the hard copies. And really, there's two components to look at this evening. Obviously, we can have other discussions if things come to mind, but I'm going to pass out a calendar that's two-sided. It's a before Labor Day start, and one side shows what's been a traditional calendar within Council Rock, the way we've always run our calendars with the typical days off and in-service days and the 5 embedded snow days at the end of the calendar. The other side of that calendar is the same before Labor Day start, but we did something a little bit different if you had an interest in considering this type of a calendar, where we embedded several typical days off, and we'll use those to be our first makeup days for cancellations before we add days at the end of the calendar. The second hard copy that I'll pass around is the exact same thing, those two components, but reflected after Labor Day start. So you should have two copies before Labor Day on two sides, and then after Labor Day. So we'll start with what is on your listing a version 1, which is a before Labor Day start. It's in the black print in the upper left-hand corner. So what you see is what has been a typical calendar within Council Rock for the last several years. And the only difference this year from some previous years is that we're pretty much clear indicating when we start school, depending on when Labor Day falls. Typically, as you would read in the bottom of the calendar, we do say that if Labor Day falls the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, that school will open after Labor Day. But we did want, because the 4th is right there in the middle of this conversation, we did want to have folks take a look at it, because one of the things that we did change recently was the additional day off for Election Day in the spring, which pushes our calendar back another day at the end of the year. So you'll see, as you look at this particular calendar with, again, the typical in-service days and other days off, that if we were to start before Labor Day, the last day of school for students would be on the 13th, if we used all 5 snow days, and on the 6th if we did not, and then obviously anywhere in between should we use several of those days.
I don't know if you want to answer this now or wait till we go through all the versions, but we had talked about locking a graduation day. So do these two versions make any assumptions about what graduation day is, or not yet?
Yeah. Okay. No, it does not. And one of we can certainly consider locking in a graduation day. Once you lock in a graduation day, you do one of two things. You either are locking it in on probably your last day of school, your day 180, should you have a pretty significant extension of school and not change that day. We're not 100% sure what that means to us from PDE purposes. Okay. So we even talked to Bob, and he's not even clear what the calculations are. Before, we used to know that it would be a financial penalty for each of the days missed for each of the seniors, because your underclassmen would all continue to go to school. We're just not sure what that means. We do know that school districts do it. So we can consider that if that's a desire of the board.
Just curious.
It's just the Penn State thing. Yes.
Well, summer session for students, correct? They start early.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
The school calendars that I've looked at that are able to lock in a graduation date have a smattering of days off. In other words, basically, by locking in a graduation date, you're almost forced to make it a little bit later. And then you have a smattering of days throughout the calendar that if you need to capture it for a snow day, it becomes a school day. And if you don't, then it's just a day off. So, for me, I know that when my kids went through school, the locking in of the graduation date was actually a very important thing. A lot of families had issues about, family that wanted to fly or travel and stuff. So that's why I think it's important. In my experience, that was an issue, but it's competing priorities because, like I said, if you want to lock in graduation, it almost means it's going to be maybe a little bit later in June than it would be earlier, or you would have to assure that you were starting before Labor Day. So it's a matter of, is the before or after Labor Day the biggest priority? Is the locking in of the graduation the biggest priority? And I think it would be important to know what the community thought on that.
So for folks that are watching, what I did, just to enlarge the calendar months, is to break this up into 4-month periods. So this really there's really no impact other than the before Labor Day start in this particular calendar. Then as you take it a little bit later, pardon me?
Let's just, we've gone by algorithm for many years. We have an algorithm for when we start, in terms of when Labor Day is and when we start.
Correct, it's on the bottom of the calendar. That's correct.
Okay, but let's give the voice to that. That historically, the algorithm is what?
If Labor Day falls on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, then school opens after Labor Day. If it starts on the 5th, 6th, or 7th, school begins before Labor Day. The only reason why we presented this calendar, and you'll see the after Labor Day start, is because the 4th being right in the middle. The other piece was when that decision was made, we also didn't have the spring election day off,
Okay.
which we now have. So we just wanted to give people a sense of that because where it places the end date.
And I appreciate, I just wanted to, that it's just because literally it's the 4th, and because we're not really thinking, are we, about changing it globally going forward. We're still thinking of the same notion that first 3 days it goes one way, last 3 days it goes another way.
Well, unless the board again has a desire to talk about that, but yes, that's not our recommendation to begin that.
It's just because it's on the cusp.
All right. So then I'll go through just for, again, the folks that are watching at home or will watch this later, then you'll see as you get to June where those end dates are, the 6th, if there are no snow days, up to the 13th if we have the 5 snow days. Okay? So if you want to flip this over and look at version 2, so this is what would be different in a version 2 calendar. So nothing changes in those first 3 months. I'll advance it so people can see. So really, August, September, October, November look the same as they would in the prior calendar. But now when you move to the February and March dates, you'll see a red line underneath February 19th, March 26th, March 27th. The opportunity or option that we had here is, and this maybe fits a little bit nicer with the locking in of a graduation date, is that we can build within the calendar really up to 3 days. We could take fewer, but we're suggesting 3, that if we were to have a cancellation, hurricane day, a snow day, and you can see that I've labeled those. If you look at the February 19th day, if we were to have one cancellation in the school calendar prior to February 9th, then the notice to the community would be that February 9th would no longer remain a day off, but would rather become a school day. That means that where we would typically say we've lost that day, we are now extending in June by a day, we wouldn't need to do that.
That's assuming that we've already used up the extra days we've built in, or
Now,
before
we're
we
doing
used
this
those
the
extra
other way.
first.
Now, this would be
Got
first, correct.
Got it.
And then if you shift over into March, you'll see the first 2 days of the spring break for next year, the 26th and the 27th of March of 18. So if we were to use a second and or a third day prior to March 9th, then those first 2 days of spring break would become school days. So we could embed 3 days within the calendar prior to March 9th, meaning that if that's all we had, our end date for school, which again reflects the same as being June 6th, we would not need to extend that. If you did not use those days and we had those same 3 days, you can see we already are jumping into the next week and we are now at June 11th.
Barry, I hear this as an option. I will tell you with my vision, that solution for 1 day would be fine. But as soon as we went to more than 1 day, when we said those were school days, the emails will rip about parents who said, we already scheduled the time off, we already bought the tickets, we already made the reservations, we already scheduled grandma and grandpa to be meeting us in Florida, and we will have difficulty with parents and potentially high absentee. I applaud the thought, it's the right thought. We already get those complaints about that week of vacation already. So for that reason, I'm open to it, but I think it will come with its own weight.
It becomes less teachable days too.
Because your population is not present.
Pardon me?
So for staff development, have those been valuable staff development days because we ran into this shortage of staff development days recently, right? And so like the impression I had from that recent event is that staff development days are like gold or diamonds or both. And so were those being used for meaningful staff development or were they more like conferences?
So this day, February 19th, is not a staff development day. These days are the professional exchange days, and what they would do for staff would shift over to become the 28th and 29th. So staff these would be student and staff days. These would be the professional exchange days that are now scheduled for the 26th and 7th, would go to the 28th and the 29th.
And what's a professional exchange day?
The professional exchange days are days that are contractually where teachers can perform other professional responsibilities in exchange for those days. They do not report to work on those days if they've completed those opportunities. If not, then they do come to work and work on the direction of the principal.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So really, as you look at a calendar like this, it really is a matter of priority. So what you give and what you take in this scenario is you're able to assure yourself that you're not extending your June days as long. You could probably, under this scenario, more likely lock in a graduation date, feeling fairly confident that you won't be missing, a week or more of school for those seniors. But you do lose that opportunity for families to commit to having time off, and within 2 weeks of that time, telling them that they are now school days. And it would be very difficult for families to book vacations and trips because by then they would have already committed to plane fares or rentals or departure. So that's the pro and con of doing that. So the 26th and 27th are days that we do take back if we exceed the 5 school days. So it's not uncommon. Well, I shouldn't say it's not uncommon. It's very uncommon. But in those unique circumstances where we lose a number of days, we do go back if we have time to do so and take those first 2 days from spring break. But you've already had 5 other days before going there.
And we could still do that with this model in that February 19th could become day number 1. Days number 1 through 6 could be in June.
Right.
And then days 7 and 8 could come back to those 2 days of spring break.
Agreed.
Yeah, that
Agreed.
becomes an option sequentially.
Days of last resort.
Right.
And lastly, in addition, this is an arbitrary date saying that those days happen by the 9th. I mean, if you wanted to balance it, you could jump it up and say if we have a snow day or any cancellation by June 31st. So it gives families almost a month before, 3 weeks before that. So you can push that date by which that cancellation occurs further back to give people greater notice too.
And have we confirmed that there's no union issue with bus drivers or anything on President's Day?
Yes,
So that would be a free and clear day if we needed it.
yes. Cafeteria, our professional and support staff, and the bus. transportation.
I mean, it does come down to priorities. I agree. I mean, it's weird if you make a plan to travel. I mean, I know there are school districts that do this, so it does happen. But it's, if your priority is to ensure that the last day of school is in the first week of June, this is a way to achieve it. If your priority is, something different, if your priority is to save and not take away from spring break at all, barring an incredibly horrific winter, then you go the other way. So it's really like, what's the most important?
Well, there's segmentation in our school district because to the seniors, the
Oh,
one
no
day
doubt.
is very important. To the other 12 grades, kindergarten to 11th, the potential that they had a travel vacation is important.
Right.
And so on sheer numbers, that goes one way.
By the options I see, the real first decision is, do you want to start after Labor Day?
Right.
Right, so maybe,
Which I think, two things. I think it impacts many more people to make that decision than the people who choose to go to summer session at Penn State, who will have to start the Monday virtually after graduation. I think it'll be the 25th if I know Penn State's calendar.
I just checked, it's the
Yeah.
24th actually, but yes.
Yeah,
Right.
it's that last week in
Yeah.
June. So, but honestly, if it's published, the seniors aren't making that, I wouldn't want to see a kid not go to summer session over that, but it's got to just filter into their decision process. It's not a pre-done.
What it filters into is their decision process as to whether they're going to senior week. It's not filtering into whether they
Oh,
make
and
it.
missing the first week of college?
No. I'm saying
Not missing
usually
senior.
where we've been when we've cut it close in the past couple of years. There was a year, not too long ago, but we
Yeah,
cut
they-
it close.
Yeah, there was
And
senior week.
kids had to get their senior week was gone and they left right after.
Well, that's what I mean, when they're sitting there with the acceptance and it says you have to come to summer session or you
Right.
can, you're gonna miss senior week if you do that. So I think that's
And-
why.
We know that there are some schools that graduate after the summer session starts, and that's a hassle too. But the thing is, it's a crapshoot. You don't know, because in this calendar, if we start after Labor Day and there are no snow days, which could happen, then they're out on 13th. But you're not going to know that until March,
Right.
April.
My
Well,
kids weren't a
maybe-
big part of senior week. What goes on senior week?
Nothing that you'd wanna rearrange your calendar for.
I think my kids did,
Daughter is leaving from Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, South.
but that's not a
Coast,
school
New
sponsored
Jersey.
activity.
No, it's not.
Okay, I just want to be clear that it's,
No, but that's.
my kids lived on a conservative budget.
That's my point. So, my kids live on a conservative budget too. They're-
South Coast of New Jersey.
Have you looked at when most of our snow days happen?
They really do later.
I mean, are they in December, January, or, are we gonna know by February 9th? No.
typically they're in January to February, yeah. I mean, the uniqueness is,
Oh, I'm
we had
sure,
some
yeah,
fall,
sure.
we've had December cancellations, we certainly had fall cancellations with hurricanes,
Yeah.
for a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's
So you're right.
outliers, but.
So February 9th, I mean, it's possible that you would have, if you're gonna have a tough winter, you've had a day or two already. But you're not gonna have typically a significant number of days.
Okay.
So maybe it's helpful to look at the after Labor Day start and showing you what those differences look like if you do or don't embed any days within the calendar. And then you can make some decisions. This is the traditional after Labor Day start. So it's version 3 on your handouts. Again, calendar similar to the pre-Labor Day start. Everything, the only shift is to starting school on the 5th of September. And if you take a look, as Ms. Brooks said, that the last day of school with no cancellations is June 13th. With 5 snow days extending the school year, you can be out as late as the 20th. And then obviously, if we have a harsh winter or other cancellations, you can see how you could sneak into that week of the 25th, where you get into the conversations about summer session and those kinds of things. And if you, and for people at home, the most important aspect is the end of the school year in June. And then if you move to version 4, again, embedding those same 3 days, the February 19th President's Day, first 2 days of spring break, which are March 26 and 27, you'll see then that Again, we're out on the 13th, but you would have to extend beyond those first 3 days that we would make up before you see yourself. So the likelihood is you're not likely to bump into the week of the 25th, and you may not even get into the week of the 18th with 4 or 5 snow days, because 3 of those you've already made up in February and March. Again, the give back is that people can't make plans during those 3 breaks, that long weekend in February and the spring break, if they want the entire week off.
Unless you fall back to the February
Yes.
1st and March are 6 and 7.
Correct.
Or 7 and 8.
Correct.
Have you been to camps at all? I'm sorry. I'm wondering, like, the earlier June, the possibility of getting out significantly earlier in June in terms of what all of the local.
I think most of the camps get a lot of staff from Philadelphia teachers, and they historically go later. And so if we close earlier, that gives a gap of unattended time. I don't think we go later. In any of these scenarios, I don't think we go later.
I'm thinking of parents with childcare.
Right. So that is an issue.
Well, either
Or
that or
it
the
could be a
kids-
good window for vacation.
Either that or the kids who attend summer camp typically leave when, 3rd week in June or 4th week in June?
No,
Not sure which one.
some of them don't leave, some of them stay here.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
I think
there's a
it's
lot- a lot
mostly
go.
closer to the end,
Yeah.
in my experience, but
Yeah, I mean, we know what kind of feedback we're gonna get if we put out a calendar that says before. Go before Labor Day, what's that?
It says what?
I said, I think we know what and how much feedback we will get if we put out a calendar that says we start before Labor Day. I think it might be interesting to put one out with an after Labor Day start, in my opinion, with 1 embedded day versus 2, and see what the feedback is there. For a light winter, that's kind of where I'm falling right now. I haven't seen all of it, although I'm not sold on anything I go before 2. I'm just curious to see what the feedback would be.
right, I agree that most of the commentary we've had in years where we've opened before Labor Day have been people saying that they want it after, so, I
And
mean,
we're
if,
breaking our algorithm if we do that too this year.
well, actually, the truth is, I want to correct Barry, because for the longest time, the algorithm was actually, if Labor Day is September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we start after Labor Day. If Labor Day was 5th, 6th, or 7th, we start before. And if Labor Day was on the 4th, we looked at other things in the calendar to see when Christmas and New Year's fell, and was it like a long winter break or a short winter break? And when the Jewish holidays were, because some years you'd have 3 days off, some years you'd have no days off, or just 1 day off. And so the 4th was actually a floater for the longest time. So there was a lot of, it depended how it fell. So,
And I would say this too, just for your consideration as you look at it, there are 2 fall days in this calendar. Some years there are 3. So again, if you were to follow, if you want to keep an algorithm and determine whether you're embedding days, you could push this calendar back. If this were a day where we have 3 fall holiday breaks, then you would push this back by another day in June.
So out of curiosity, before we really start to debate individuals, does the administration have a perspective or a preference?
I think our preference in terms of start date is after Labor Day. We are interested in seeing embedding these days. That's why we're bringing this version to you. Although I think we're very amenable to the 1 day as opposed to all 3 of the days. We certainly recognize the issue around spring break. That said, we would love to obtain some community feedback on that piece.
I agree with you, Dr. Fraser. I would like to see it after Labor Day. I'd like the 19th to be the 1st, and then there'd be 5 in June. And I'd like the 26th and 27th to be advertised as days 6 and 7, just so the community has a thought and they have an ability to react to it. Because I don't want to see a scenario where graduation's any later than the 22nd.
I'll go with them.
That would
but
actually
I just
be
want to clarify, so you mean, you said 6 and 7, but it would be 7 and 8, because there's 5 snow days, then 1 and
plus
6.
6, yes, you're right, it was
Okay.
7 and 8. Yeah, so they would be the last ones, but it would put the idea out there in the community. I heard you, Mr. Red, I've gotten, or Mr. Clark, I've gotten feedback too, but I gotta say, I had 5 emails about it out of a 12,000. Like, we did get some feedback about starting before Labor Day, but it was not overwhelming. So I feel like.
Regardless, you and I agree right now, so.
I feel like no matter what calendar we're gonna put out there, we are going to get some level of feedback. So the goal can't be to get 0 because negative feedback.
No, of
Yeah,
course.
no.
I mean, I
We're
think
gonna
that
get it, somebody's always gonna.
the issue of before
It
after
may be
Labor
goal,
Day.
but you know, a little
I got
realism.
The before after Labor Day is
Oh,
clearly
yeah.
the thing that we need to decide which we want to present next week. Did
Well,
you
the other-
have-
All right, well, I think we have three that are, let's hear from, let's go around the table and see if we get.
Well, the only thing I would say is, my goal was to get it out, or, I mean, you know, the rest of this is good dialogue, but I think we wait too long with the calendar. That's always been.
So which one do you like?
I'm in agreement with Wendy and Amy. Why?
And Jerry.
That's version 4.
Is that, is
It's
that?
a modified
That's
version
it's
4.
version-
Modified.
it's version
Four with a
4,
modification.
Counting it as 1, 7, and 8.
How valuable is it to the school district to lock in graduation day? Or is that simply something that we're intent on as a consideration for families? I mean, commencement seemed to me to be a big logistical operation. And the idea that it might move seems to be a big headache.
Yeah, I think it's more so for families. That said, last year we found ourselves in the situation where we moved it to a Friday,
Yeah.
and that proved to be logistically challenging for us. So if you asked me 4 or 5 months ago, would it have been helpful for us to be locked in to a Monday through Thursday? The answer would have been yes.
Yeah.
So there is upside for
Let's
us.
be very clear that part of being religiously sensitive, the
Friday.
goal is to try and conclude before sundown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
So
if you
I-
recall, we had to advance the times
Time because
of
it's
both
Sunday.
ceremonies
Everybody-
this past June.
I'm seeing the 23rd as a prime example, or is that too late? I mean, not recognizing
23rd.
It's a Saturday.
June 23rd, or I'm sorry, 21st. I'm colorblind.
Yeah.
It's 21st, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's the latest you would hope to see in census unless we had an outrageous.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna lock it, you'd almost have to be the latest week. You know what I mean?
Well, the point is, we
Well, no,
could
if we get
start
it earlier,
before
you
Labor
move it up.
Day and lock it earlier.
Oh.
So if that's your priority, if your priority is to
Okay,
lock it
okay.
in, then you have to shift at an earlier part of the year.
I really think we have to think about that locking it in. I mean, I think it seems like a good idea now, but I prefer we don't lock it in until, I mean, I don't think grandparents are making plans in the August before graduation. I think if we said, we'll lock it in by February 1st, people, I just, if you lock it in on the 21st and the kids get out the 13th,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that
That's a
is not gonna be a
nightmare.
But the
good
problem is that
scenario.
you can't lock it in February until you don't have any snow days. to have.
Yeah,
So
I'm trying to
that's-
think how late, you know,
March
a little,
30th.
we have traditionally, I think, waited till April, so maybe we could commit to a little bit
I
earlier.
guess it depends on the weather.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're getting out the
But-
calendar early. I think that's a great idea. We get out the graduation.
The other
I
thing,
don't agree with locking it at all. I think it does create a potential of a big gap. I mean, I would ask the question the other way, which is, candidly, if you locked in a date that was 2 days before the actual last day of school, you just have real big attendance for 1/12 year population. What's the real consequence of that? A little bit of lost potentially a little bit of lost
Revenue.
revenue.
State.
So, I mean, if, that would be the only, you know, if you were locking it in, but that's why I don't want to get into it, because it becomes just messy.
I could be swayed either way, I don't know.
We're locking it in, we at some point say what the date's going to be,
Right.
so that's
Oh,
really
yeah,
all we're
that's-
talking.
honestly, for me, another big
Yeah.
issue is I'd like to see us approve more than one year's calendar at a time.
That was the next.
Because there are people who in the fall want to try to plan, you know, I mean, we had a situation, somebody, I don't know if they emailed the entire board or it was just me, but somebody had asked a question that they had to commit to a summer vacation. Somebody had to request time off at work for this coming summer. And when is we didn't know when things were. If we could do 2 or even 3 years at a time because we have this algorithm, why not?
Well, I think that came up when we approved the calendar this year. The question was, should we do this with a view to the next year, so we're not, so at least we have a line in the sand, we can move it, but.
I thought we were gonna approve the start date for, it's gonna be before or after Labor Day, we're just gonna pick the beginning day, I thought that
Well,
was.
just for the record, in 2018, Labor Day's on the 3rd.
So.
So-
that's definitely-
So we start after.
That would be an after start anyway.
That notation is at the bottom.
Is it on the bottom?
Oh,
Okay.
it says, oh.
It's
Okay.
highlighted in yellow.
Oh, good.
at the
All right.
bottom. Yeah.
I didn't go that far.
For example, estimated.
What do you think,
Right.
Dr. Foster?
I see.
I like the Dr. Fraser plan, the February day, the date of last resort in March. And,
Sounds to me like we're getting some consensus.
Isn't that awesome?
Okay,
So,
Then-
just for the folks that are watching, so I can be clear, we're talking about an after Labor Day start. This first day of February 19th would be our first makeup day for a cancellation. We would then use the 5 days that are embedded to the end of the calendar year in June. And then should we need to, we would go back up if we were beyond 6 days for days 7 and 8. Rather than extending further in June, we would move back to the first 2 days of spring break.
and do we want to keep that language, makeup day if canceled before February 2nd? Or do we want to talk about moving that into January?
I think that's fine. Somebody has a trip planned, that's the most expensive time of the year to travel. They've already made their plans, they're just gonna miss that day. Only thing I would say is the language, if someone needs that day off, needs to be a little free, or we're gonna get tons of email. Like, we unfortunately have to use this day. If you had a trip planned and you missed that one day,
We'll work
give you
with you.
makeup work and
Just like
the
all
world will keep spinning on its axis.
Yes.
Barry, you wrote that date that you wrote there, assuming, I think, that 26 and 27 would be day 2 and 3. I think that's much too early, because if we've already got the 5, we will not have, it would have, by that early February, we would have had to have Armageddon.
You're referencing this.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
correct. That was if this was the first day, second day, third day. But you're right, that goes away now.
I know Snowmageddon, somewhat Snowmageddon. I think it, we'll actually have to make that decision. We'll know pretty assuredly going into it by the weekend before, but you never know. So I just wouldn't even give the caveat.
I agree. I would say as soon as you reach day 7, before this day, it's a school day.
Yeah.
It could happen the week before, actually.
As soon as I get the
Right.
5 days, I'm telling you, cancel your plans, because if I get the day 5 and it's February, I'm still gonna tell you, because
Right.
6 and 7 ain't coming.
And I know you said it was always Aaron, I completely believe that's true, but I think we should advertise it a little better, because
The March days,
Yeah,
spring, yes.
that's all I'm
We can do
saying.
that, yep.
I'm sure it was always there, but maybe we need to push that information more upfront, because
Well, and
as a parent, I can't tell you that I really knew that.
And also, I think the language is a little confusing to maybe the average person. Like, I think it should say this, like it says makeup day if cancellation before February 2nd. I think it should actually say, school will be open this day if there is a snow day prior to, a school closing because of snow prior to. Like, I think you have to
Just
make it
label
really
as
clear.
Snow 1, go down to the bottom of June,
Well,
snow 2.
and
3,
just so
4,
you know, the
5.
only reason we didn't use snow is because in some years we had the
Hurricane.
hurricane. And we didn't want people to say what, and people would have said,
Or
and have said, I didn't anticipate that because it wasn't a snow day, it was a different reason for the cancel. So that's why we use the generic term of a cancellation.
Or power outage or anything.
Yes.
We'll
I
probably
see.
just want to do a separate key on this thing, numbered 1 through 10. So 1, day 1 is February 19th, day 2 is June, whatever, and then just go the whole way down.
It would probably be a good idea to present it if you're getting the superintendent's advisory.
We just had it this past Monday.
Oh, sorry, okay, never mind. But even in January or something, that's a vocal community, and
I can certainly circulate it.
or you can send it to the principals and they can give it to the PTOs to make
And
sure
you'll
they
list
circulate it.
Certainly.
They're not gonna be looking for it right now.
Yeah,
So if it is somebody's issue, they're probably not gonna look for it till later.
Yeah, actually,
And
let's
we
start
will
with the
open-
recommendation.
we will open up that, whatever we did, calendar at crsd.org for feedback.
Good deal.
And we're gonna vote on this next week?
No, we're
No,
gonna present it as a discussion item again for the
For
public in the,
When's
And
on
then
the,
one
when's on
month
the
later.
calendar?
Vote on it.
we'll vote on it in January.
And we'll
We'll
still
really
be
push
at
it
the
out to
beginning.
January.
Yeah, but they'll see it.
We need
They'll
time
see it-
to
they'll
get
see it next
feedback.
week.
No.
I mean, I think the fact that we're putting out a calendar that starts after Labor Day is gonna be like okay, now I get it. So, any other questions or comments? Then we are adjourned.
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any public comment? Is there any other public comment? Then we really are adjourned.